The Dusty Key Mystery by Lynn. Chapter 1. The Light. It was summer. Georgie liked it. The air smelled like growing things. The bugs got up about the time the chickens went to bed, and their chirpy little songs sometimes outdid the frogs down by the creek. Best of all, there wasn't a teacher tapping his ruler on the desk, forever bothering a fellow about figures and letters. Yes, summer was the best of all for a barefoot boy in the country, but there was a frown on Georgie's freckled face as he kicked a stone along the dusty road. His hands were thrust deeply into the pockets of his patched jeans. His ragged straw hat was pulled down over his eyes. He had been feeling wonderful this morning when he opened his eyes and remembered that he had a long vacation ahead of him. Then, right away at breakfast, in the middle of a bowl of oatmeal, his mother had to spoil it all. She announced that cousin Nellie Jane was arriving on the 8 o'clock to spend the summer with them. "She's only 7, Ma had said, calm and cool, like it didn't matter much. She won't be much help around the house. I'll expect you to take her with you when you do your chores. You'll have to see that she's out from under my feet the rest of the day." Georgie wanted to protest, but the troubled look in Ma's eyes had made him stop. Having an extra mouth to feed all summer wasn't going to be easy for Ma and Pa, but with Aunt Bertha going to the hospital next week, where else could the little girl go? Maybe there wasn't any other way, but it made him sore just the same. Georgie had had his 12th birthday last month. When a boy's 12, he has a lot of things to do. They can't be done with a 7-year-old girl trailing along, and that wasn't the worst. Any 7-year-old girl would be bad enough, but Nellie Jane wasn't just an ordinary girl. She was different. Aunt Bertha and Uncle Harley read to her out of some book all the time, and it gave her the idea that God was looking down from heaven and watching everything. Why, a thing like that could keep a fellow from enjoying the best things, like the peaches off the neighbor's tree, and a swim in the part of the creek where Pa thought it was too deep for 12-year-old boys. Georgie turned in at the Mueller's place and headed toward a chubby figure hoeing in the garden. He hated to break the news to Pete. Round Peter was disgusted. He ranted and stormed, waving his arms in the air and shouting that they couldn't do that to them. But after his storm was over, he calmed down and admitted they'd just have to make the best of it. Then he had a confession. Since his mother was taking in washing for the motel this summer, he was to have care of his 5-year-old sister, Julie. They were both in the same boat. After supper, Georgie and his parents put on clean clothes and drove the old car in to meet the train. Newburgh might have been a small town, but to Georgie it was packed with exciting and interesting sights. The lights that blinked their advertisements, the teenage gang milling around in front of the ice cream stand. Everything seemed so nice. Different from the moon, the back porch, and the crickets he knew, like another world. He climbed important-like down from the car, and while his parents talked to the station master, swaggered up to read the railroad schedules as though he met trains every day. Then he waited at the edge of the platform. It was getting dark when he heard the train whistle in the distance. He kept watching the track. Then the spirit of adventure thrilled him as he caught the sight of the beam of light probing around the bend. He watched motionless until the locomotive came throbbing up the tracks to a jerky stop. His eyes opened wide with admiration as he watched Nellie Jane hop off the train, her little green suitcase in hand. What must it be like to ride on a train like that? All by yourself, too, without any grown-ups along. Georgie scowled when Nellie Jane reached up to kiss his mother and then his father. He backed away to let her know that he wasn't interested in any such greeting. "It was so nice of you to invite me to your house, Aunt Jessica." It was like a practice speech, Georgie thought. Then she looked over at him. "Oh," she exclaimed, "you're most grown up, Georgie." The boy grinned. Maybe it wasn't going to be so bad after all, having her around. She sure was pretty with black curls pulled back in a ponytail and long black lashes curling over those blue eyes. Pretty soon, though, he thought, she'd start talking about that book that tells him about God and makes a fellow feel jittery inside. They walked over to the car and climbed in. Pa turned it toward the farm. "Did you like your ride on the train?" Georgie asked, when they were settled in the back seat. The ponytail bobbed up and down. "It was fun," she said, "but I miss Mommy and Daddy awfully." The little lips puckered, and Georgie was afraid he would see tears. He just had to think of something else to talk about. "Do your folks still read out of that book?" he heard himself asking. It was the only thing in his mind, and he had to think fast. "You mean the Bible?" The girl brightened, and the tears changed to a smile. "Oh, yes. When I left, Daddy read where Jesus said, 'I will never leave thee or forsake thee.' Thee means you," she explained. "I kept saying it over and over to the music the train wheels made. And I knew God was right there with me, 'cause he always keeps his word." Georgie didn't answer. He wasn't sure he'd want Jesus riding with him. He'd be glad to get away from grown-ups who always watched to see that a boy didn't do what he shouldn't. They were on the highway near his farm home, and Nellie Jane wanted to know all about the people who lived in the houses they were passing. They rounded a curve and started up a long hill. Georgie was watching a big moon rise from behind the cornfields. The little girl spied a shabbily kept, two-story house just ahead atop the hill. "Who lives there?" she asked. "Oh, that's the old Benson place. Mrs. Benson died last winter, and there's nobody living there now." Georgie turned back to watch the moon. Some folks said she was nice, but she was awful old and skinny, and she had a long nose. Us kids thought she looked like a witch, so we didn't hang around there. "Nobody lives there now?" she asked. They were almost opposite the old house now. "Nah. Look, there's a light in the upstairs window." "Oh no, But he stopped short. There was a light, not the bright beam of an electric light bulb, but soft light, like candlelight. George remembered the Benson place didn't have electricity. Mrs. Benson might have used candles, but Mrs. Benson was dead. No one lived there now. It couldn't have been. His eyes stared out the rear window toward the place. It couldn't have been. But he was sure there was a light in that upstairs window. If you enjoyed Chapter 1 of The Dusty Key Mystery by Claire Lynn, join us next time for Chapter 2. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends.